Well, good evening and welcome to the Halley Diet presentation. It's the webinar on water research update by Dr. Michael Donaldson. We're excited to have you with us this evening. Thank you for joining us. We know that it's a busy time of year and we're just excited that you're able to be with us. I'm Paul Malcolm, President and CEO of Halley Acres, and we really enjoy bringing these presentations to you, and the amount of research and information I think is quite astounding, and you'll be impressed with what Dr. Donaldson will be bringing you this evening. But before we get started, I wanted to do a couple of housekeeping things. One is to let you know that if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just type them there at the chat window, and we'll queue them up and present them to Dr. Donaldson at the end of the webinar, so feel free to communicate with us. There will also be a couple of surveys that he's put in here, so feel free to just share with us the information that he's asked for. Nothing invasive, just some get-to-know-you type things. And we have the HydroBoost kit that will be given away at the end. There'll be 3 recipients who will receive the kit. And so if you hang with us to the end of the presentation, we'll be drawing some names from the people that are there. So we're just real excited to have you with us this evening. Before we get started, I'd like to go ahead and open us in a word of prayer and ask the Lord to bless our time. Dear Lord, we just thank you for another opportunity to share some vital information, Lord. We pray that you'll bless Dr. Donaldson and that you'll keep the technology running and that everything will work smoothly, Lord, and that through this presentation we'll honor you and that people will be helped. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, Dr. Donaldson's been with Halley Diet since 1998, and he's been our chief researcher and has conducted all sorts of studies. Water has been one of those topics that have been at the forefront of questions. What's the best type of water, and how do we take it, and how much water do we need? And there's so many questions around the water issue, and Dr. Donaldson's been at the forefront of researching what the truth is about water, as well as many other facets of health. And so we're real excited and privileged tonight to have Dr. Donaldson with us. And Dr. Donaldson, I'll just let you go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. We hope to have a very informative webinar for you here, talking about water, and I think there's something in here for everybody, whether you drink a lot of water or a little bit of water, or you're not very thirsty at all. There's actually something in here for everybody, because in some ways it touches all of us. So we hope that this webinar will help you to have better health, and you'll be able to carry out those things that you want to do, that God's called you to. So we're going to talk about water, a little bit about filtration and really how to get that, but mostly what to do with the water that you have purified, ways to boost it, to get the most out of it here. But first, let's talk a little bit about water and why you ought to purify your water. You know, in America, we just open up the tap, put a glass under it, and drink it. That's kind of uncommon, really. We've decided in this country that it should be okay and safe to drink tap water. But to do that, we put things in it, like chlorine or chloramine now. It's more, in some places that's more common. That's in the water. It's a disinfectant. It kills germs. It's really good for that. It's not very good for you because it kind of disinfects the germs inside of you as well. Fluoride, that's often in water as well. Well, they said that's good for teeth. The results from studies really don't prove that out, that it's really that beneficial for teeth. Other studies have actually shown that it's a neurotoxin. So you really don't need fluoride in your water. You'd rather get rid of it. So there's other things, you know, industrial waste products. We've gotten better at that in this country, but there's still some. And some of those are hard to take out of the water. Some stuff leaches down into the groundwater as well. Things like nitrates in heavy agricultural areas. I live in an area like that. Nitrates are a real issue in groundwater here in our valley where I live. More and more pharmaceuticals get thrown into the water. You get fish on Prozac now. Yeah, you find detectable levels of Prozac in lots of streams and lakes around the country now. And of course, there's always rock minerals dissolved in the water. There's lots of reasons that you need to purify water. There's a couple of really good ways to purify water. Distillation is one of the best ways. Reverse osmosis. They both have advantages, disadvantages to those. You can see those there. You know, it's a batch process. When you distill something, it's kind of a pain to keep your distiller clean. Keep on top of it, it's not too bad. it doesn't cost much per gallon of water. Reverse osmosis, you have to keep on top of that schedule to change your filters. But you get a lot of water, even though it is a bit wasteful. Sometimes more than a little bit. So those really are the best purification methods. You're going to end up with something we would call low mineral water. There's really not much in it when you're done with it. So that's the best way to purify water. There's a lot of water filters, whether it's just like a Brita water filter, something, pitcher, and it's got a carbon filter in it, to something more exotic with 3 or 4 filters in series in the water. They all are not quite complete. They don't give you low mineral water. There's still some things that are hard to take out. Fluoride, for example, that's hard to get rid of. It's best taken out at an acid pH, but water doesn't come at acidic pH, right? So it's hard to get rid of. Chloramine also is very hard to get rid of. It can be taken out the same way as chlorine, but it takes a longer residence time in the purification filter to get rid of it. And of course, those rock minerals, they're still left in. And for a lot of people, those just really aren't good for their joints, and they can feel it. So often it's better than nothing, but it's still not a very complete solution. So the reverse osmosis and the distillation is the best source. That's the best way to purify your water. And we found really distillers are more reliable, and you can tell if your water is pure or not when you use those. So there's one survey here to start off with. I have a couple of surveys, but first off, just tell us what kind of water you drink. Pick from there. Was distilled water? Do you add something back to it? Municipal water? Well water? Bottled water, just something off the shelf, or some kind of premium bottled water like Smart Water, Fiji water, bottled mineral water. Go ahead and fill those out there. I see some responses coming in. And I think you can kind of see the results as they come in as well here too. So it's a whole variety of stuff, right? And some people using some good water, Dasani water, Aquafina, that's bottled water. That's just distilled water with a little bit of minerals added back to it, or reverse osmosis water, a little bit of water. So there's different spring waters. There's some Smart Water, Fiji water. So that's the first question. Let's move on here and look at one more question is, how much of this water do you drink? You saw the kinds of water. Well, how much of it you drink? So think about that. Just a little bit of water. You drink a quart a day. Do you drink, a few quarts a day? Or maybe you really work hard. You just really consume water. Sometimes when it's really hot, I really do drink a lot of water. So there's, about a fifth of you drink just a glass or 2 a day. If you add it up 60%, something like 1 or 2 quarts a day of water. So that's a fair bit of water there. All right, we're going to move along here. We talked about low mineral water. That's what you get when you're producing water with a distiller here. And what happened in Flint, Michigan, that's all over the news, and the politics of it. I don't want to talk about the politics really, but about what happened scientifically. They changed the source of water that they were using. Instead of the water that they had, they changed the surface water, and it's basically like rainwater, and it doesn't have a lot of minerals in it. So you had an aggressive form of water. It started to leach the lead out of the old pipes. The lead was pretty stable with the alkaline water that we're using. But it just goes to show you that the aggressiveness of the low mineral water really is there. If it's not pacified with some kind of minerals and it doesn't have a little bit high pH, then it really doesn't, it will leach minerals out of whatever it's in. So that may cause a loss of minerals in people. That's what the dangers were for low mineral waters, is the potential for losing minerals. And I put that in parentheses there too. It may cause loss of minerals. It might not. It really depends on who you are and your system as well. It might be overstated. Some people that have more of a subsistence diet, they're kind of borderline on their dietary intakes. They're more susceptible to that. You know, if you're taking in a lot of water, say drinking 3-4 quarts of it a day, that makes a difference as well, right? Because if you're drinking a lot of distilled water, the chances of it having more of an impact are greater if you're drinking more of it. But what about people that are eating mostly raw foods? You know, they're not drinking much purified water. You're eating mostly raw foods, drinking some vegetable juice, you're getting a lot of liquid already in your diet. Some people say, that's about enough. I just need a glass or 2 a day. Do those people really need to add anything to the water? The answer is probably not. It's not that much water that they really need to get all worried about. You know, they're not the people that are really in danger of getting damaged by low mineral water. They just drink the distilled water, they're quite fine. But, you know, we talk about distilled water, and that's fine if you're not drinking very much of it, but there's things you can do to boost your water too. You can make it a good source of minerals, of ionized minerals that are good. They're easily absorbed by the body. It can be a source of alkalinity. It can structure the water too. And, you know, there's a reason that Dasani and Aquafina put a little bit of minerals back in the water. It's just, most people find that that does taste a little better. Now, the truth is, they don't waste much money on it either. There's not that much minerals in that water. You know, just enough for the taste, really. So there's a few options of what you can do to boost your water. The HydroBoost kit that's already been mentioned, it's very similar to the HydroBoost that we've been selling. That's one option. Magnesium bicarbonate is another option. Some of you may know something about magnesium bicarbonate. We'll get more into that in a bit here. Another option is just to squeeze a little bit of lime juice or lemon juice into your water. Sure, it's acidic, but those acids there will actually help it alkalize the body as the acid is metabolized. That's kind of a mouthful, but what I'm just saying is that those acids, as they're broken down by the body, they leave an alkaline ash in the body. That's where it's coming from. So, you know, just a little bit of lemon and lime in your distilled water, that's fine. That's fine to do as well. So, let's talk about the HydroBoost kit a little bit here. Okay, HydroBoost has a few things in here, and HydroBoost that we've been selling, you know, it's the same thing here. It adds trace minerals and magnesium. Magnesium chloride's a large component of what's in the trace minerals. It raises the pH of the distilled water, and it structures the water. You get better absorption, so it carries things better into the cells, and it carries toxins and metabolites out of the cells better as well. Though the one problem we found with the HydroBoost that's all mixed together is that it didn't consistently raise the pH of water. So we looked at that and tried to figure out, well, why is that and what can we do about it? And we tried different things to make it work, and really it just came down to us, we need to separate these. We need to just separate them, put the willard water and the trace minerals really just separate from each other. Put in separate bottles, you mix them up in a 1-to-4 ratio, 1 part trace minerals, 4 parts willard water, and they worked really well. And then we found we did get the consistent elevation of pH. It's always above pH 9, right? And here's, you know, how much to add. Just, you know, 0.1 mils to 12 ounces, 0.4 mils of the other one, and similar amounts for gallons of water there. You know, it doesn't take a whole lot. You wonder why you do an 8-ounce glass, because it's, you know, 1.3 drops. And I wasn't able to count 1.3 drops, and I doubt you could either. So that's why we went with the 12-ounce glass. It's easier to count that. And you could probably use 12 ounces of water anyways. So that's the HydroBoost kit there. That's one thing to consider as a way to boost your water here. Let's talk about water. We're going to talk about alkalinity here in a minute here too. Now, I'm talking about water and pH here. The distilled water, when you just get it out of your distiller, it actually has quite a low pH. I tested under 5 consistently here. If I take that fresh distilled water and add my HydroBoost kit to it, the pH really doesn't go very high, not above 6. Now, when I left that water and just leave it or vortex it, the pH of that distilled water goes from less than 5 to about 5.6. Then when I add HydroBoost kit to it, the pH goes up to 9.6. So that carbon dioxide in the air is actually helping to buffer your water. It buffers the blood in your body. It also helps buffer your water too. So before you use your water, you know, shake it up a bit. Mix it with some air. Just let it sit open. You know, use the WaterWise distiller. It's kind of an open unit there. it sits for a day or so in that, and it absorbs carbon dioxide from the air, and it actually will raise the pH a little bit. And so that's something. If someone's testing the pH of the water, they distill the water, and they put the HydroBoost in it, and they find that the pH isn't going up. This is one thing that can be happening, is that you're using very fresh distilled water, and you're not mixing the carbon dioxide in at first. You have to do it first. If you do it afterwards, it won't raise it. So you have to mix it first or let it sit for a while, and then the alkalinity works really well from the HydroBoost kit. Now, alkalinity is different from pH. They're a little bit different measurements. You talk about alkaline water at a high pH, and those terms can get really mixed up. But alkalinity really is measuring the resistance to change in pH when an acid is added. All right, so you're measuring pH, but alkalinity, you can think of it really like a buffer. You look at your HVAC system for your house, right? It keeps you comfortable inside. If it's cold outside, it helps you stay warm. If it's hot outside, it keeps you comfortable and keeps you cool inside. So it's a buffer. In your body, you need a buffer for pH to keep the chemistry of the body at the right pH, the balance of hydrogen ions, so that the enzyme reactions operate at a normal rate, an optimal rate usually. So what you're looking for is alkalinity, not just a high pH. Alkalinity is what buffers the acids in your body. So we have a short video here to explain that and really show you the difference between the pH and alkalinity here.
Alright, today in this video we're going to talk about pH and alkalinity. Hi, my name is Michael Donaldson. I'm with the Hallelujah Diet. One of those things we talk about is water. What's the best kind of water to drink? In the midst of that conversation we talk about pH and alkalinity, high alkaline water is better than acid water, and so on. Today I want to show you the difference between pH and alkalinity, what that really means. So I have 3 beakers here. I'm going to put distilled water in one, HydroBoost kit in the other one, and magnesium bicarbonate in the third. And I'm going to use a pH meter here, and I'll set this up so you can see the numbers as we do it. Alkalinity is defined as the amount of 1 molar acid, hydrochloric acid, to change the pH of a solution, a 1 liter solution, down to pH 4.3. We can divide those numbers all by 10. So you take a 0.1 normal solution of hydrochloric acid into 100 mils, and you have the same pH change. So it's just a little smaller scale, so we can do this more easily. Now if we're going to check that we're right, we can take our total dissolved solids meter and just rinse that off in a little bit of distilled water back here, and just check and see what we have here. So I get a reading of 1.4 here. I don't know if you can see that or not. 1.4, 1.3. Could rinse that in distilled water, but that is distilled water. Stir that a little bit. Okay, I see 184 on that. That's what you see. And that's exactly what I expect, about 185 for the HydroBoost kit. Alright, stir this a little bit. And I see 211, change 210 on there, which is about right. So total dissolved solids is pretty comparable between the HydroBoost kit and this dilution of the magnesium bicarbonate. And stir that a little bit. Drop that in there just a little bit more. Alright. So I get pH 5.1 pretty much. Bumping around a little bit, but you get the idea. Okay? Now, so I'm going to start with the acid and see how much acid it takes to drop below pH 4.3. I'm guessing it won't take very much, right? Let's start with 50 microliters. Exactly guessing because I've done this before. So if I put in 50 microliters, what do we have? 4.3. Okay, so that's all there is to that one. Done. I heard that pH, okay, the meter beeps, so it says it's stable. Alright, so here's 100 microliters. Okay. Down to about 9.2. I've dropped more than 8.9. Okay, there's 200 microliters. And it continues, it doesn't necessarily stabilize. We don't have to know the number in between exactly. We're continuing to drop them. We're down to pH, below pH 7. There's 300 microliters. What are we at now? Oh, okay. We are below pH 4.3, and that's about what I expected. Alkalinity is what you want to buffer the acids in your system, remember. You don't need pH, you don't need high pH, you need high alkalinity. That's what is going to quench the acids and neutralize them and keep the pH balance of your body where it belongs. It's not about having high pH, it's about having alkalinity. And you can add alkalinity without even changing the pH of the system, really. You see, this, it has a lot of alkalinity, but the pH, 7.7, not that high. Alright, so let's go ahead and start adding in here. Here's 100 microliters. A second. So you see that drop down, 7.4. Here's 500 microliters. That's half a milliliter. Alright. I'm going to switch my petters and use a bigger one now, because we'll be here a long time if we just add 100 microliters at a time. So let's add 500 microliters all at once now. Alright. 6.9. Well, it didn't drop very far, did it? It's buffering the acid very nicely. There's 3.5. 5.3. Here's 4. Okay, we dropped below 4.3 at that point. Between 3.5 and 4. Which is about what I would have expected, really. It's right in that range. But you're going from 50 microliters, so 0.05 to 0.3 alkalinity to almost 4.3. It's between 3.5 and 4 for measure of alkalinity. So thank you very much. Hope you understood this well.
Alright, so I hope you saw the difference between just high pH and high alkalinity there. Where the HydroBoost had a high pH, but it didn't have much alkalinity. The magnesium bicarbonate had a lot of alkalinity there, but not a very high pH. So the magnesium bicarbonate is another option for boosting your distilled water. And there's benefits beyond the HydroBoost that you get there. This Noah's water, you see a picture of this bottle here. These bottles, that's one form of magnesium bicarbonate water. You can just go and buy that in California. It just comes out of the ground naturally with a lot of magnesium bicarbonate and hardly any calcium at all. It's a very good water. Okay? One problem with that, getting this magnesium bicarbonate is you can't put it in a capsule. It only exists in solution in water like that. So there's a way to make it yourself, and we'll talk about that in a bit here. But let's talk a little bit about magnesium here. We go quickly through this. Magnesium, I don't want to go too quickly because I want you to catch some of the importance of this. And it's involved in more than 300 enzyme reactions. I've seen it as you quoted 325 different enzymes. It tends to balance calcium. Where muscles contract, magnesium helps them relax. Where calcium helps drive a nerve signal, magnesium helps to quench that signal so the nerve can relax. Whereas calcium tends to helps to promote blood clotting, magnesium will prevent platelets from clotting. Calcium may think of something that makes things tense, rigid, and brittle. Magnesium has the opposite effect. They tend to balance each other. You can't have too much of one and not the other. Too many people have a lot of calcium in their diet, not enough magnesium. where you get that fluid, the smooth, relaxed, and flexible kind of things. There's benefits for magnesium for the heart. It's very important for the heart muscle itself. In the Nurses' Health study, they found a much higher risk of sudden cardiac death for those that didn't take magnesium. Those in the highest amount of dietary magnesium had a 37% decrease in relative risk of a sudden cardiac death. And when they measured it in the blood, it was even higher protection, a 77% decrease in relative risk compared to those that had the lowest levels of magnesium. Right, in a review of 16 studies, of 313,000 people, they found that higher plasma magnesium levels led to lower rates of cardiovascular disease. And more recently, there was a randomized controlled trial, 350 milligrams of magnesium a day. And that led to reduced arterial stiffness, so the arteries were more flexible. Over time, not just 24 weeks, but over time, that should lead to lower blood pressure as well. These links down here, just make a note here, on this magnesium part, down here, those are hyperlinks, and that will take you to the sources of these documents here, of the studies that I'm talking about. For blood sugar, magnesium has had good effect as well. In a trial here, there are some patients that were just diagnosed with diabetes, and turned out they were also low in magnesium. And so they gave them magnesium, or a placebo, for 4 months. They found it improved their fasting blood sugar levels. A challenge test with a glucose tolerance test, they found that their glucose levels were lower after that. Insulin resistance, down. Triglycerides, down. They're looking at the groups that improved their blood sugar numbers. 50% of the magnesium group improved, and only 7% of the placebo group improved blood sugar. Okay, so the magnesium was really helping in that case. I said 20% of the magnesium is present in the muscles, skeletal muscles, and here we find that 60% of the magnesium is present in the bones. Well, those might be backwards there, but anyways, about 60% is in your bones there. If you don't have enough magnesium, you get large crystal formation in the bones. Those large crystals aren't as strong. They can't bear the load that smaller crystals have. They found in a study that women that had higher intakes of zinc, magnesium, potassium, fiber, they had higher bone mass density at the lumbar spine. And that's a hard place to really boost the bone density. Well, it turns out these packages, fruits and vegetables, they naturally come with magnesium, potassium, fiber, and bicarbonate in them. That's the way God put them together. If we get back to diabetes here, we've got one slide out of order here, but we're all right. We talk about diabetes again here. There's a randomized control trial with 70 women. They gave them not a very good form of magnesium, just magnesium oxide, but they found that it still had benefits there. Blood sugar numbers improved. But look at this last part here, the hospitalization of newborns. Only 6% in the magnesium group, 26% of those newborns in the placebo group ended up in the hospital. So yeah, magnesium has had some really good benefits there. All right, in a 20-year study looking at magnesium and diabetes, the ones that had the highest intake of magnesium had a lower risk, a relative risk of diabetes, and also lower systemic inflammation as they measured by the CRP. They had lower systemic inflammation and lower insulin resistance. See, what happens is that diabetes itself increases your body's requirements for magnesium. But diabetes also causes you to waste more magnesium at the same time. So you need more, but you're losing more at the same time. So it's a vicious cycle. And you just need to get a lot more magnesium to get on top of that. That's something that will help you with diabetes. It's not the only thing at all. Obviously, you have to change your diet. The Halliday diet, we've seen some really good successes with diabetes when people really, the body helps them with the diabetes when they change their diet and adopt the Halliday diet. But magnesium is a factor in that because it's part of the fruits and vegetables, and putting that in your water will also help as well. All right, I mentioned earlier that 20% of the magnesium of the body is in the muscles. This is the slide I was talking about here. All right, so older women, they put him on a diet that only had 150 milligrams of magnesium a day, and they gave him a task to do. And they found that that task was harder to do. They burned more oxygen to do the task. Then they gave more a diet with 350 milligrams of magnesium a day. Gave them the same task. It was a lot easier to do. So they found that they were fatigued faster, and they had to work harder to do the same task compared to when they had enough magnesium. Rugby players, when they gave them magnesium, they found that they had less DNA damage. That was helping even protect DNA. We have muscle cramping, spasms, twitches. It's a good indication you don't need just potassium, you need magnesium as well. All right, magnesium is good for a lot of the body. It's also good for the brain. It's good for mental health. It's very important for mental health. All these different symptoms show up when people are low in magnesium. I won't read this all to you. You can read them here. What happens is that magnesium is the original calcium channel blocker in the brain for nerve cells. It's the gatekeeper to keep too much calcium from getting into the nerves. You get too much calcium in there and you get an overload. That leads to free radical damage. You get toxic levels of nitric oxide. The nerve swells up and it can die. All right, so magnesium is critical, especially as a gatekeeper for those those calcium channels. It's the original one. There's a lot of drugs that kind of imitate magnesium, but if you're just to use enough magnesium, you won't need the drugs. That's originally what you needed to do. Migraines. Quite a few studies have been done for migraines, both intravenous as well as oral magnesium. Intravenously, it can just stop a migraine, just like that, okay? And the effect continues on even a day later. It stops the migraine headache. If you take oral magnesium, it's good prophylactic medicine in a sense, because it can reduce the frequency and intensity of migraine headache. What about depression? They found a significant association in Norway, this large study of almost 6,000 people. There's an association between low magnesium and depression in there. And another study looked at 41 patients. They had major depression, schizophrenia, adjustment disorders. They measured magnesium in the cerebral spinal fluid. So that's the magnesium that the brain is exposed to. Those that had low levels of magnesium there were those that attempted suicide. More recently, there's been a randomized controlled trial in Mexico. They found diabetics that were low in magnesium. They'd just been recently diagnosed with depression. So they gave them either antidepressant drug or magnesium for 12 weeks. And they found that the magnesium did just as good as the antidepressant drug with 0 side effects. No negative side effects. I suspect there's some positive side effects as well, because the magnesium is required for the body. It's good for cardiovascular health, good for bone health, as well as mental health. For women, there's a condition while you're pregnant called preeclampsia. You may have never had it. You may have heard of women having this. They get very dangerous high blood pressure, water retention. It can lead to seizures in the mom, and you can die from this. And the baby can also die. They found that really magnesium is the, quote, drug of choice. Different studies, 9 randomized control trials, look at that. It outperformed 2 other drugs that were being used. So now magnesium sulfate is what they use at the hospital. And part of that was determined by this trial that was published back in 2002, this MAGPIE trial. They found that magnesium worked much better than placebo for reducing moms from dying. Just magnesium. Works good stuff, but why should you wait? If you know someone is pregnant or you're pregnant, you really should ensure that you have sufficient magnesium intake, okay? Because that's going to keep you ahead of the curve. There's no reason to wait for an emergency. It works similar to mental health. It works in good ways here too. It causes blood vessels to relax. You get lower blood pressure out of it. It blocks calcium channels in the endothelium, in the blood-brain barrier, as well as in the brain itself. It can block those calcium channels to block that nerve activation. So that's several ways of protecting you from preeclampsia there. So those are some of the benefits of magnesium, both for muscles, for energy, for producing energy, for the bones, for mental health as well. Let's talk about the other side of this molecule, the bicarbonate. bicarbonate occurs naturally in you here. And you follow the chemistry, or you can just read down below. It's carbon dioxide and water is in equilibrium with carbonic acid, which is equilibrium with bicarbonate. That's the alkaline buffer that's in your blood. Okay, that's what buffers the acids in your blood. Interestingly enough, in the stomach, when it generates hydrochloric acid, every time you get a molecule of hydrochloric acid, you get a molecule of sodium bicarbonate. How about that? That's pretty cool. You know, if you do that just out in the open, say you take some vinegar and baking soda, you generate a lot of carbon dioxide. In the body, it's going to reverse. It takes some energy to do this, in reverse, of course. But every time you make hydrochloric acid in the stomach, you get a molecule of sodium bicarbonate as well. Okay, and the third place you find bicarbonate showing up is in the metabolism of organic acids. Acetate, citrate from citrus fruits, malate from apples, for example. All, when they're metabolized, they form bicarbonate. So there's three different sources, three different ways that bicarbonate shows up in you. So there's benefits from this too here. Let's talk about this. For the bones as well. You know, Western diets are low in fruits and vegetables. They don't have those organic acids in them. You end up with a net acid ash from the Western diet. That's what we're talking about. Same thing, acid and alkaline balance here. For years, the kidneys can compensate for this, right? For a while, but after a while, they run out of calcium from your bones, and it gets harder. In a couple trials here, they have given people sodium bicarbonate here, older men and women, or potassium bicarbonate. They found it wasn't the sodium or the potassium, it was the bicarbonate that was having the effect here for reducing urinary losses of calcium. Right? And the bone turnover marker normalized as well. And another study where they gave people potassium citrate. The citrate here, as I mentioned, the citrate breaks down and forms bicarbonate. Fascinating, really. Yeah, it's a fair amount. You have 6 grams of potassium citrate here. It increases the bone mass density. It's not the potassium so much as it is the citrate that's doing this here. So, bicarbonate is good for the bones. Bicarbonate, this is really amazing. When I found this research, this was amazing. Here, and it ties a lot of things together here. And it will help you understand cancer as well here. See, tumors have their own metabolism. They have this anaerobic fermentation, and they generate acid. It's an acidic environment around the tumor itself. Right, when it has this acid, it tends to break down the extracellular matrix around it. When that extracellular matrix breaks down, it's much easier for cells, especially stem cells from the cancer, to break off, metastasize to another organ. It's not the original primary organ that kills people. It's the metastasizing tumors that are really, really deadly. So they've done in animal studies. They show that if you give animals oral bicarbonate, you can shift that environment around the tumor, and you can save the animal's life. Right? You reduce that metastasis. And I'll show you 3 animal studies here. The first one is the effect of bicarbonate. They put bicarbonate in the water that the mice were drinking. They put tumors inside the mice and saw how long they survived here. So see here, here's the control group. You know, after 120 days, you're left with less than 40% survival. In the bicarbonate group here, you're still 80% survival and doing pretty well here out at 120 days. So, working pretty well. Well, this group went on and did another one. They did another study with a non-volatile alkaline buffer. It's the IEPA here. That's what it stands for. I won't tell you what the whole thing stands for. But here's some pictures of the mice at day 0, week 1, 2, week 1, 4, 5, and 6. And you can just see the difference. Here's the mice on tap water. Here's the mice that are taking the alkaline buffer here. All right, here look week 6. The more intense color shows you have a huge tumor here. And you have a tumor, but it's not near as intense here. Again, this was the alkalinity that was changing the pH around the tumor that was saving the mice's life. Now they did this with lysine as well. It turns out that lysine is fairly alkaline as well. What happens when you take lysine is your stomach is going to produce hydrochloric acid to neutralize it. For every molecule of hydrochloric acid that's produced, it produces a molecule of bicarbonate that goes into the bloodstream. And you get what is termed an alkaline tide. So if you see here, there's no picture here at week 12 because there's no mice in the tap water group. lysine group, I mean, he doesn't have anything showing up here at 12 weeks, right? You're over 60% survival here, even out at 16 weeks here, doing well. Here, this is week 7. You know, those mice are gone. So a very severe cancer there in this case here. You see that lysine, the lysine was stronger than the bicarbonate and the other molecule that was being used. So very good there. In people, they found that bicarbonate helps. I guess this wasn't in people here. This is an animal study as well. That acidic microenvironment around the tumor, it prevents some chemo drugs from working. It really can't get close to the tumor because that acid buffers it away. Well, if you can break down the acid barrier, then the chemotherapy works better as well. And they found that with the mouse model with breast cancer, as well as this metoxantrone, worked better when they had the bicarbonate on board the animal before they give it metoxantrone. Worked a lot better for reducing the tumors. So there's some cases where people are doing therapy. You can do some natural things alongside of that to make those therapies work a lot better. It doesn't have to be either or necessarily. There's been several studies that have been done looking at exercise capacity. Now, it takes a fair bit of bicarbonate to do this, but even small amounts of bicarbonate are going to have a similar effect, but not as dramatic. And you can look through here, you know, cycling, whether it's 10-second sprints or 1-minute sprints, you know, by the end of it, they still have more power and they can still go longer, right? Swimmers, you know, bicarbonate significantly improved their performance on the last 2 sprints. Initially, they're all good, but that acid builds up in the blood. If you have more bicarbonate there, it neutralizes the acid so that fatigue doesn't set in, so you can go longer and harder. And, you know, that gives you more endurance. All right, another fascinating thing with bicarbonate. This is really amazing stuff here. This goes back to 1924 here. See, diseases take advantage of acidosis in our body. Sometimes they produce their own acid, but they certainly take advantage of acid in us. All right, Arm & Hammer, the baking soda company, they put out some instructions in 1924. All right, this is almost a century ago, just short of 8 years of that. 92 years ago, put out a recipe for dealing with acid in the body that comes with the flu. You know, just taking sodium bicarbonate, you know, good sized servings, but certainly doable, and very, very inexpensive, by the way. Yeah, to help take care of this. Dr. Cheney, he was with the Armour meat packing company. He found with their employees that he could, you know, working with them, he found if you induce a mild acidosis, you could bring on cold symptoms, and you could relieve them with a bicarbonate, a sodium bicarbonate, way back in the 20s. Now, if you use fruits and vegetables, part of what you're getting is bicarbonate, and you're having some of its effect here. This is some, you know, it's other antioxidant things too, but it's the alkalinity also in the diet that's helping people, you know, counteract the acid that's building up, that's helping those flu germs thrive in you. So we're going to take a little bit more. So talked a lot about magnesium bicarbonate. There's a little video here, again, showing you how to make this. Now I can talk about it here, but maybe help you to see how to make it. And it just, for some people, seeing does a lot better than just hearing or showing me here. So we'll do that video now here. Oops. Here we go.
In this video, we're going to talk about magnesium bicarbonate water. So you need 2 things for this. You need some seltzer water, like I have here in my hand here, and you need to know that, you know, all it is carbonated water. You need the carbon dioxide dissolved in water. You want that. You don't want anything else. You don't need cinnamon citrate. You don't need any sodium stuff. You just need carbonated water, and you can find that. You know, you get a 1 liter bottle. 2 liters doesn't cost much more than 1. The other thing you need is milk of magnesia. I just have a store brand here. There's, you know, there's popular brands all over the place. You need to know just a couple of things about this. It's sodium hydroxide, that's the active ingredient. It shouldn't have anything else in it besides purified water. If you look on the drug facts, down where it says inactive ingredients, it should say just purified water, nothing else. Some brands have actually added sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach, to them as a preservative. You don't need that, okay? Amazon sells one called Good Sense brand that's available there, and Dollar General also has one available that you can get. And you may find it in your store just like I found this one, okay? So, seltzer water and milk of magnesia, that's what you need here. So, this is a suspension. What you want to do is add 6 tablespoons of this, 6 tablespoons to 2 liters. Or if you have a 1 liter bottle, you just add 3 tablespoons. So I'm going to start by shaking this up a bit and mixing this here. So I'm going to measure this out first before we add it, before I open the bottle here. So there's 4 tablespoons there, and I need 2 more. So I'm going to put 2 more, and I just collect these along the way here, because every bottle of this comes with one on the cap here, just like this new one. See, it's got a cap right on it. Okay, so then I'm ready to open this. I'll probably need to take a little bit of, well, it doesn't look like it. I'm going to take a little bit of, the liquid out, so I have room, to make sure I have room for my 6 tablespoons. And I usually take about 1/3 of a cup out, and I add back in as much as I can. Now if you pour this in slowly, it should make as many bubbles. I think eventually it just starts to bubble anyways. So I just add that back in there. There's 2 tablespoons, here comes the other 4. Alright, so it fizzes, it bubbles. We try to keep the carbon dioxide in there if we can. So I don't waste around too long here. Rinse these out a little bit. Alright, then I tend to add up, get a little bit more carbon dioxide in there. Top that off. And seal it up. Okay, so it's all white right now. It's like a white suspension because you put magnesium hydroxide. The magnesium, instead of combining with the hydroxide, it's going to combine with the carbon dioxide and make magnesium bicarbonate. So it's a pretty nifty system there, and it just uses it all up. The reason you use 6 tablespoons is because that's the right amount to get a complete reaction. You might just have a tiny bit left, so you get a little bit of white stuff on the bottom, and you can just ignore that. So what you do is you go put this back in your fridge, and 15 minutes later, you take it out, mix it again. In about half an hour, mix it another time. Just invert it a few times. After about an hour or so, it should be pretty well reacted, ready to use. I tend to leave it overnight. It will get about crystal clear when it's done. Not just about, it does get crystal clear. This is a bottle I had made yesterday. If I wipe that off, you might be able to see how crystal clear it is across the top there. Okay, it's very clear, this is here. So you take that, depending on how much you want to use, you can make a 1 to 12 dilution of that. That's like 1/3 of a cup per quart. That's a nice therapeutic amount. Gives you 150 milligrams of magnesium per liter of the water that you're drinking there. So you add this to your distilled water. Not just any water, you can add it to any water, but for drinking water, you want purified water. Start with that and then boost it with some magnesium bicarbonate. If you just want to boost it, you're not looking for a lot of therapeutic benefits, you just want some prevention. You can make like a 1 to 32 dilution, and that's 2 tablespoons per quart, or half a cup per gallon, or just for 16-ounce glass, it's just a tablespoon. And that gives you about 56 milligrams per liter of magnesium. So that's it. And you can even drink this stuff straight if you want to, right? You can drink, a half cup of this gives you about 210 milligrams of magnesium. And that makes a pretty good supplement with magnesium. That's like a couple of capsules. Turns out it's probably a little cheaper than the capsules. And at least as well absorbed, maybe better. So that's it. That's what you need to know about magnesium bicarbonate. The benefits of it and how to make it. It's really simple. Just do it yourself. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so there's a quick video showing you how to make this. I apologize for going a bit long here. But you tell there's a lot of information here. So let's just do a wrap-up here, some comparisons of the different things we've talked about here. Distilled water, the cost to treat a gallon of it, not counting distillation, 0. Right? The HydroBoost kit, you look at cost as well as total dissolved solids, the pH of the water, concentration of magnesium, and the alkalinity as well. You can do a comparison right across from these. Alright, the HydroBoost on two different dilutions. Here's a strong, get my pointer here. Here's a strong mix of the magnesium bicarbonate, and here's a weak one. Here's, the 1:32 that I mentioned. That's enough to boost your water really well. That's similar total dissolved solids as you find in the HydroBoost kit. It's just a bit under 200 parts per million. That's a good level there. The magnesium bicarbonate, the strong stuff, at 500 parts per million. pH, high pH, the alkalinity, not so high. The magnesium bicarbonate, just the weaker form of that, has about 15 times as much alkalinity as the HydroBoost does. And again, there's even more than that in the magnesium bicarbonate, about 30 times as much, 35 times as much alkalinity in this strong bicarbonate compared to the HydroBoost. The HydroBoost is convenient. It's good stuff. You can use that trace minerals itself if you want, just as a magnesium supplement. There's a fair bit of magnesium. All you have to do is use a bit more of it. Okay? So that's the comparison there. And, if you're just drinking a little bit of water, doesn't matter that much. Just drink your water. Okay? The best water really is the structured alkalized water that's in the fruits and the vegetables. That's the best stuff. After that, if you have to drink water, distilled water. Just, a little bit of activated carbon filter. Those are always built in. That's good water. If you drink a lot of it, you can boost your water. People with arthritis, they find they still do better just with distilled water. Thank you very much. Okay? So they'll tell you that distilled water is still the right thing for them. The HydroBoost, it is a source of magnesium. It's a great source of trace minerals and some structured water. The Willard water there gives them some good structuring of the water there. Willard water itself is a good supplement. And again, the magnesium bicarbonate does add, a lot of magnesium. Depends how much of you use of it, right? You can use a small amount of it, or you can use a lot of it. So that's what I have here. I guess I can turn this back over to Paul and let him take it from here. He can direct some questions here.
Sounds great. Thank you, Dr. Donaldson. Lots of great information and a great demo there on how to make the sodium bicarbonate, or I guess it's magnesium bicarbonate. But a question that really came up overall, people were wondering what Willard's water is. So can you give a little description of Willard's water?
Willard's water was made by Doc Willard back in South Dakota. He was a chemist, and he came up with a solution of, it has a magnesium sulfate and a couple other things in there, that it formed a micelle, which structures the water. When you add it in dilute amounts, doesn't take a lot, it will form a structure to the water. It raises the pH, but it's pretty good stuff for a lot of things. And they found animal health was improved when they added Willard water to their water that they drank. It improved plants' health, much stronger root structures to plants when they gave it to roots or to plants. And we found it, it's a good thing to add to your water as well. It does help with it works better if you have some minerals in the water as well. If you just add it by itself to distilled water, it doesn't work quite as well. But if you add in, some trace minerals and the Willard water, you get a synergistic effect there.
Okay. So when you say structured water, does that sometimes people call it wetter water, or is that water that's better absorbed through the cells?
I guess some physicists look at the size of water clusters, and they would call it like a microcluster water. So water, I guess, it forms chains and clusters, and we think of it just as single molecules, but in the body it doesn't really occur that way. So it breaks down those large clusters, so it gets through the water pores and the membranes. So yeah, it gets wetter in a sense. Yeah, it has lower surface tension for sure, and will in a sense make water wetter. So it wets you better in a sense. It's more hydrating. It doesn't just run through you.
And then the minerals that are attached to that water or associated with it would then penetrate the cells easier. Is that correct?
That's correct. Minerals, that's vitamins as well. Nutrients are going to be absorbed better with water that has Willard water in it.
So if you took, just as an example, you took the HydroBoost, put it with the distilled water, and then added like barley max to it,
then the nutrients in the barley max would be better absorbed.
They really should be, yeah. That should help with the structure of the water. There's some things in the Willard water you're not going to get that kind of structure in just putting the barley max into the water.
Okay. Well, that was great. Another question theme was relating to the alkaline water machines, the Kangen and the other, and just what the recommendation would be as far as comparing that to distilled machines or ROs.
Okay. There's a couple different thoughts on that. First of all, they tell you they have a good filter, and they're pretty good filters, but it's not the gold standard of distillation for getting everything out of the water. That's the first thing. Distillation is a better filtration system because it purifies it completely. The alkalinity is what you're looking for. They raise the pH, but it only works with the alkalinity that's already in the water. It doesn't actually add alkalinity to the water. Raise the pH. So, if you work with some water that already has minerals in it, or you have to add minerals to it to really get the alkaline ionizer to work. The other thing is that really is what research is finding is it's the molecular hydrogen that's really having a benefit. It's not just it's not the pH so much, but it's the hydrogen in there. So I think the industry is actually moving towards machines that add hydrogen to the water, not just raising the pH of the water. That's what you're going to see coming on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely does. And a question came up, and I know you covered it, but just for clarity, the difference between the HydroBoost now and what's different between that and the kit now and the product that we had before.
Okay, that's a good question because I didn't really address that here. I've talked about it and it's written down, but it's the difference. What's the same? You're getting the same ingredients that you got before. You're getting the same amount of alkalinity actually. When I've tested it, combined beforehand and just added separately, I get the same amount of alkalinity. So you're getting the same trace minerals, you're getting the same structure, the same alkalinity. You're not getting the same pH. Before you weren't getting that elevated pH there. So by bottling them separate, we get a consistent pH elevation there, and we're saving you a ton of money in the same process as well. So it's a little bit more complicated, but it's economically, and that pH is always going to be up there as long as you have stirred water first.
And so as we were having a manufacturer bottle it for us, combining the two, and as you were testing it over time, it wasn't maintaining the pH that it would when you would test it separately in their lab, and that's basically what you've done is separated the two products so that the consumer combines them and achieves a consistent result.
Right. So in the lab, I get consistent results. I say, I don't know what's wrong with this stuff. It works for me. And you mix it up and use it. But it sits around and it's just not, the two components aren't really compatible to be put together. That's what we figured out. And then we don't have to ship this stuff. We end up shipping a lot less liquid around the country, really, by avoiding that mixing step. So that's where a lot of the savings come from, I think.
Yep, absolutely, and paying somebody to do the mixing for us and so forth. And then there was another question relating to the, I'm trying to find it in here, the difference between club soda and tonic water. Can it be added to either one?
The club soda you could use there because that just has some citric acid added to the water. And I've done that a time or two when, I didn't just get carbonated waters. The citric acid doesn't really change things too much. I think it takes a little bit more of the sodium, or it takes a little bit more of the milk of magnesia to fully react there because it has a little bit more acid to it. The tonic water, I haven't tried that, and I don't think I would use the tonic water. I would just avoid that one.
Okay. Well, people really look like they appreciated the demo that you had and the information. Anything you want to share as a wrap-up? We've been on here for about an hour, so we probably need to wrap it up. But any last comments?
No, I think I talked quite a bit already, so I think it's good. Hopefully the information's clear to you, and it's really helpful to you. And you may have to go through and look at it some of it again. You know, it took me a long time to put this together, and I shoot it to you in an hour, so it kind of just like a fire hose to absorb all of it. So you may need to listen to this again.
Yep, and that brings up a great point, Dr. Donaldson. This webinar is recorded, and we post it to the MyH Diet website later this week. And so feel free to come back and watch it as many times as necessary. And there's a lot of information in here, so we'll try to do our best to break it down into pieces for you, make sure you understand it. As we mentioned in the very beginning, we have some winners selected tonight for the HydroBoost kit, and we have Cheryl Murphy, Greta Sawyer, and Steve Weaver. Those are our 3 lucky winners tonight. We appreciate everyone joining us. Next month, we have an incredible presentation on inflammation, and you won't want to miss that one. It's really going to be informative, just like all of these are. We want to again thank Dr. Donaldson for joining us this evening and for all the great research that he's doing and really helping change people's lives and improve their health. So thank you, Dr. Donaldson, for your time and for your knowledge and for everything that you do for us. Again, thank you for joining us, and until next month, may God bless you and keep you healthy. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Have a great evening.